Let's assume you have perfect human senses, 20/20 vision, great hearing in the high and low ranges. You have a sensitive palate for fine foods. You can feel the slightest touch and smell the distinct differences between wines and perfumes. Your experience should always be correct, right? Well, not actually. Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion describes our view of reality as a burqa. We can only see, hear, taste, and feel in a certain spectrum, which is only a tiny fraction of what is actually going on. We assume that what we perceive is going on is actually all there is. We have no way of seeing damaging radiation or hearing ultra-high frequencies. We don't need to. Evolving in Africa gave us no reason to detect an electron spin. It takes logic puzzles put into practice called science and experimentation to determine what is actually going on and fill in the gaps of our understanding. When Van Leeuwenhoek looked through the first microscope made out of a water droplet and seeing the bacteria for the first time, it must have pried his limited view of the world wide open. And with each new scientific discovery, we were able to perceive reality even more. Sadly, not only are we limited by our senses, we are also limited by our mind's ability to perceive and understand what we are sensing. This is why an optical illusion works, why magicians can trick our mind with illusion. Pareidolia, which is the tendency of the human brain to see patterns where there are none, evolved as a way for facial recognition software in our minds so that we can better communicate with people, which was very important for our survival. That mixed with empathy led to animism and anthropomorphism of objects or animals. It is also why people can get spiritual and emotional feelings from seeing a face in a grilled cheese sandwich. We are so limited of just how limited we actually are mentally, we need psychology and unbiased testing to find out. In learning, we also have limits. When we as children don't understand something, we come up with the best guess we need to get by. As we get older, we eliminate or replace these ideas based on people around you. Even now, I probably have a few errors in understanding about issues that I created as a child or young adult, and it's so funny when I discover one, especially if someone is with me. It shocks them because they assume I should know since I'm so smart. One of the ways to make a camera view a full screen and not have to store the data is by having cyan, magenta, and yellow detectors clustered together. Now the yellow detector cannot detect what amount of yellow is in the pixels where the cyan and magenta detectors are. So what it does is it looks at information from all the yellow detectors and attempts to fill in those gaps. And as our eyes don't perceive it, then it's doing a great job. Even if there is a flaw, it's enough for us to get the general idea of what it intends to portray. Our mind is the same way. We can't see all the parts of reality, so we fill in what we don't understand based on other related things, and if we get it wrong, it's still enough to get us by. Some of the time. What's bad is when we get dogmatic about it and cling to it as infallible. The Barnum effect is an interesting limitation, discovered by P.T. Barnum, who noted that if you can make things so vague and generalized, people will think the statement is about them. This is because in a tribal life of 50 people or less, more often than not, it was about you. In a more modern society, it usually isn't. This is why psychics, cold readers, and con artists are able to trick a hapless viewer. Even your perception of this video doesn't convey to you all the effort that went into it. The typing, the research, the learning, the editing, the work that went into getting the money to buy the computer, and the time spent online looking for pictures. We're limited by our space. This is called the parochial effect, where one assumes that because their area is one way, the rest of the world must also be that way. We have it just within ourselves and assume that others have the same emotions and experiences that we do. So why the hell would they think like that or do that? This is called solipsism, which I find very amusing is considered a sin by the Satanic Church. It has been studied that an honest person assumes others are honest to the point of gullibility. A liar assumes that everyone around him is lying to the point of paranoia. Moving out from ourselves, we see our family and assume that everyone has the same family life and family values. Or we all have the same culture, morals, and community standards, and when we find out about other cultures, we automatically assume that ours is better, which can create cultural insensitivity, starting wars, brutality, or cultural and ethnic cleansing, as they assume that theirs is better as well. It's hard to imagine what it's like for people starving and barely getting by if we're living in a Western lifestyle. We can't see all the death that goes on in nature, which is why I made my God is not love video to point out this limitation. This out of sight, out of mind makes it easy for us to ignore or judge people, especially, say, immigrants, saying, why can't they just stay and fix their own country instead of coming here and ruining mine? Parochial effect is also why it's so easy to ignore global climate change, especially thanks to fluctuations. Right now it's record cold thanks to melting ice caps in the Arctic, caused by unusually high Pacific temperature, so talk radio can laugh at scientists and say, some global warming, huh? While the southern hemisphere feels the full brunt of climate change with record heat waves and water shortages. It also makes it easy to assume that one is experiencing a miracle when at the same time thousands are dying or being raped all over the world. God cares about your promotion more than he does about innocents starving to death in Haiti after her parents were killed in a collapsed building. For every miracle, there are at least 100 tragedies, and statistics show that they happen equally to believers and atheists alike. We just have no way of seeing all these tragedies, and our emotions would be shredded if we ever did. Which brings us to our limited understanding of statistics, which is why evolution by natural selection is so hard for many to comprehend, even though the math points for the probabilities to be very likely. We're also very limited in our understanding of time. Everything we understand about history is either from records, stories, or artifacts. Our minds are programmed best for stories, as that was the best way to pass on tribal knowledge. If we feel a story has been around for a long time, we feel it must be even more true, which is one of the reasons why holy books are given so much unquestioning authority, especially since they're loaded with stories. The Bible by itself is just a book. It's the people asserting that it's more is the reason why it's so dangerous. This is also why Golden Age syndrome is so strong, and why the very idea of the Earth being 4.4 billion years old is mind-boggling to many and easily rejected. Our understanding of the world is just a slit through a burqa. We can either continue to blindly follow our abusive yet non-existent master, or we can struggle to free ourselves through science and unbiased understanding of reality, ridding ourselves of untruths and gaining new understanding of our very minds, so we can live this life bringing happiness to each other and actually fixing problems instead of ignoring, being oblivious, or blindly attacking them. Okay guys, a little homework for you. Before this next video, please watch my What the Heck is Love series if you haven't done so already, as it's important for understanding where I'm coming from on this next video. I'll actually be making another What the Heck is Love video on marriage before I can continue in this series. The next one in this series is on marriage and how the church exploits it. Thank you.